In terms of evidence that it works, here's one of the top NASA researchers that was involved in many research around the world, and he explains in this short edit video from like a 3 hours presentation we were invited to. He explains how this works after almost 10 years of getting involved in this research with other teams from around the world. Please listen briefly.
So we like green chemoprevention from a global or public health perspective. In terms of evidence that it works, there's overwhelming evidence I won't go into here. You probably, if you're a student, you've probably talked to.
Please hear between the lines. He's saying in terms of evidence that it works, because usually people ask MD doctors or big pharma experts or other biochemists who had not done the research, don't know anything about this research, and they're not experts in nutrition. This researcher, one of the top leading researcher, he was a PhD biochemist. So he's saying in terms of evidence that works, we have plenty of evidence. And what he's saying, there are other research has been done by other researchers that he can prove it works. So please listen between the lines here. He's not trying to make anybody upset, and he's trying to be careful what he says and how he says it, but he's just an honorable scientist who's not willing to back down based on the science and research evidence that he had found in this research, what these amazing specific herbal and spices and greens can do, and how they can enhance your health on many levels.
About it, or we'll talk about it in classes, but evidence that high fruit and vegetable consumption reduces or can reduce the risk of a variety of chronic diseases. And we and others, many others now, have obtained what we think is overwhelming evidence that a variety of edible plants contain inducers of the so-called phase 2 or cytoprotective enzyme response in people. And we'll talk a bit more about this.
This is very important. He said response in people. So we flew to this to Johns Hopkins, and we were present at that presentation. It's about 3 hours presentation. There was breaks in between, so about 4 hours approximately. And we're bringing you just 2-3 minutes of this presentation that took these amazing researchers 10 years to complete almost. So the evidence are overwhelming that it works, and it works on people. So he continues here.
So I mentioned Paul Talalay, who hired me here. He, I would say more than just about anybody, is responsible for coining this term and defining sort of what goes into chemoprotection. He has pointed out, and we've drunk the Kool-Aid, and most of us who follow in his footsteps repeat this mantra, that all aerobic cells are constantly stressed by reactive oxygen intermediates, of course, toxic DNA damaging carcinogens, inflammation, infection, radiation, a lot of UV radiation that can lead to cancer and chronic degenerative diseases. Cells contain certain protective or so-called phase 2 enzymes, phase 2 genes. Most of these are NRF2 dependent, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. They normally don't operate at maximal capacity, but they can be induced by a variety of pharmaceuticals, a variety of small molecules, and by a number of dietary phytochemicals. And that third point is that upregulating these enzymes, a key feature of which is enhancing or producing higher levels of the main cellular oxidant glutathione, is highly protective and reduces the risk of cancers and a variety of chronic degenerative diseases. In cartoon form, this is Tom Kensler and I put this together. It's essentially, we're saying there are a lot of insults that ultimately can or could lead to chronic diseases. There is an alphabet soup of effectors, of transcription factors, et cetera, et cetera. I've just listed 3 of them for reasons that will become obvious. exercise, environment, all the fun stuff you can get in excess and can enhance or perhaps reduce, well, I wouldn't say sunlight. Yeah, I would. Can possibly reduce the risk of chronic disease, but certainly we know that diet and the phytochemicals contained in what you eat can modify your risk for cancer.
So here he's talking about the phytochemicals is what the plants contains. Like for example, acerola cherry contains lots of vitamin C, up to 10%. Camu camu, the same thing. But amla gooseberry contains a lot higher vitamin C than any other fruits and vegetables on the planet. It's only grown in India. So he's talking about the phytochemicals concentration, not just any fruits and vegetables, because we used to supply many of these researchers until now with raw materials, and they used to be able to test it and tell us which one contains the highest phytochemicals. And based on their finding, we know which one contains the lowest phytochemicals or the highest base, where we have purchased these raw materials from Brazil, what city, what town, what mountain, what village, etc., etc. So when we develop product, we'll know which one contains the highest phytochemicals based on these research that was tested with the researchers that we have supplied, many of them with raw materials, and they tell us the results, and they tell us they like it or they don't like it and why. And that's why we base everything we do based on research, and we supply many of holistic doctors with amazing high quality product with the highest phytochemicals possible, and it's all made in GMP facilities or NSF facilities in the United States or around the world that's certified